More with Sarah Carter. Greg Jarrett will also be joined by Derek Maltz. He's a former agent in charge of the Drug Enforcement Administration Special Operation Division, and he is going to join this discussion on Bruce Orr, Robert Mueller, and he has information no one else has discussed. That's next.
Standing up for what's right with America. We're back on the Sean Hannity Show.
All right, 25 till the top of the hour. 800-941-SEAN is our number. You want to be a part of the program. We have Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett. Also, we're being joined by Derek Maltz. He's a former agent in charge of the Drug Enforcement Administration Special Operation Division. And, Sarah, before we get to everybody, you kind of have a friend of yours that's getting the Medal of Valor today.
That's right. He received the Medal of Valor actually yesterday. He was awarded it at the Department of Defense. It's Brandon Ray Siebold, a very close friend to our family. He's been a friend of my husband for more than 20 years. He fended off the enemy in Helmand Province in 2015, saved a lot of lives, and at one point he was all alone fighting the enemy, an onslaught of enemy insurgents. He's an incredible human being, like a lot of our men and women in the armed services, like all of them are, and I just wanted to wish him the best and tell him thank you for his service to our country and that we're so proud of him.
Well, we are so proud of him, and sounds well-deserved.
And the Medal of Valor is something that, is rare, and I think there have only been 14 up until yesterday. There were 3 recipients of the Medal of Valor yesterday, so.
Unbelievable. And again, we're so fortunate. So many people sacrifice so much. And, it doesn't matter if you're a contractor. You're still in a war zone. You're still trying to help your country. It's a different capacity, but you're doing it. And
that's right, and they all served before. So these are people that are trained. They know what they're doing. They're working with our military, and they're sacrificing their lives every day and their time away from their family.
Let me bring in Derek Maltz here. Derek, thank you for joining us. From my understanding, you have information that nobody's discussed, and I'm dying to hear what it is.
Hey, Sean, how are you today? It's very nice to be on your show. I appreciate all your great reporting. So when we talk about Bruce Orr, one thing I need the public to understand is that Bruce Orr had a very, very big responsibility in heading up the Obama administration's Threat Mitigation Working Group, which was the group responsible for synchronizing the efforts of all the interagency in the government to go after the biggest threats to this country. Now, when you look at Hezbollah, for example, Sean, President Obama himself said they're one of the most technically capable terrorists in the world. So when we had this interagency case going together and we were doing some really good work, we seized $150 million out of bank accounts in Lebanon. We shut down one of the largest trade-based money laundering schemes we've ever seen in America with used cars. And basically, Sean, we could not get the interagency to cooperate and to share information. Now, what really is really annoying, we're just talking about servicemen and women. My brother died in Afghanistan, Sean, in 2003 in enduring freedom. So I'm very passionate about this topic and took my job of national security very seriously, Sean.
Of course.
So how is it when you have a Department of Justice high-level official not bringing the agencies together? We had 300 businesses in America, Sean, involved with this scheme, and we were only able to include 30 in the action in the Southern District of New York because we couldn't get the interagency to cooperate, which, by the way, was the most important function of the Obama threat mitigation working. So when you talk about Bruce Orr, and now you look at the discrete emails and the operations that he was involved in, and meeting informants around the world and setting up secret meetings, all for the, with the agenda of taking out our president. I mean, it's really disturbing me because I look back and I didn't see any of this during the time. I couldn't understand why these cases weren't coming together if this was one of our biggest national security threats. And the Department of Justice really didn't help out too much.
It's unbelievable, and it's all too predictable, and we see this happen all the time. I mean, the level of incompetence and corruption, I've never seen it at such high levels, and it pretty much goes to the heart of what we've been talking about today. Let me get a reaction from Greg Jarrett, and also the other news that we didn't get to in the last half hour is Brennan's security clearance has been revoked. It took a long time to get there, but, he's the guy that leaked the dirty dossier with Russian lies. He never verified it to Harry Reid, and that spread like wildfire, all to misinform the American people in the lead up to an election. I mean, you have a CIA director spreading propaganda and lies.
Yeah, the CIA director, former, John Brennan, as I refer to him in my book, The Russia Hoax, was the instigator of the hoax through the phony dossier. He got his hands on it, and he started peddling it to anybody who would listen. James Clapper, who was the director of national intelligence, he was the leaker, as I call him in the book. He was the guy who was trying to...
Wasn't Brennan also a leaker?
Mr. Maltz, because, Bruce Orr is one of those guys who, wasn't supposed to be in this counterintelligence investigation. That's not his job. That's not his role. He insinuated himself into the case and saw himself as a conduit, an intermediary between Christopher Steele and the FBI, and eventually the special counsel's office. When Orr testifies, he's got a lot to answer for, and I wouldn't be surprised if, armed with a lawyer, he invokes the Fifth.
That's interesting. Sarah, as you put all this together with your breaking news today, I mean, it seems like now we're finally beginning to get to the bottom of it, but the fact that Brennan had access, all this while, I'm glad he lost his clearance, but why is it all so slow?
Because, Sean, I think that there's a process that they want to follow. I mean, the administration wants to be able to follow the process the right way. Remember, a lot of people had held on to their security clearances and hold on to their security clearances when they leave office. They go on to work for companies that require high-level security clearances, or they open their own. And I think what happened here was an anomaly, something so different than we've ever seen in the past. We have a former CIA director, John Brennan. We have James Clapper. We have Jim Comey. We have Eric Holder coming out and attacking the administration with such vitriol that it appears to be so much worse than we could ever see come out of Russia or anywhere else. I mean, these are people that are supposed to be serving this nation. These are people that have been promised to be the silent professionals, to do their job, to aid the administration no matter who's in power. And they come out with lies. They come out with disinformation. They spread Russian lies. And then they leave these little drops of doubt in the American mind. I mean, because if you think about it, he is the former head of the CIA. So people who don't know the story as well as we do, or don't read all these documents, or don't have time to do that, see the former head of the CIA come out and say, the Russians have blackmail material on the President of the United States. Even though he has no information or proof of it, he says it, and it spreads throughout not just in the United States, but throughout the world, and causes this doubt and puts America in such a bad light. This is a person that needed to have his security clearance revoked. No doubt. He is an embarrassment to the CIA, to the men and women who work there. James Clapper, I believe, is in the same boat. Eric Holder is in the same boat. This is an embarrassment to our country that people within our own nation who border on sedition of our own government have done this. And hopefully we do get to the bottom of this, and hopefully Congress does the right thing and gets to the bottom of it. But more importantly, we need an attorney general that actually does his job. And we need to ask Rod Rosenstein a lot of questions, because just like you said earlier, there is no one overseeing the investigators, and someone needs to do that.
Let me bring Derek Maltz back in this context here. We're seeing the highest levels of the FBI, the DOJ, in this particular case, John Brennan, and the former director of national intelligence, Brennan, the CIA director. Part of what you are observing in your life, in your background, you were in charge of the Drug Enforcement Administration's operations division, and you have seen a ton of failure as it relates to the very organizations we're discussing in terms of protecting the American people. And specifically, I'm talking about like the Boston bombing and other instances where we're missing signs. Now we're finding out at the highest levels that politics is being played in the most duplicitous of ways, which probably has to captivate at least 85% of the attention instead of focusing in on their jobs.
Sean, exactly. So let me just give you an update on something. So after 9/11, the FBI directed a DEA administrator, the Attorney General, recognizing that drugs, are connected to terrorism because of the proceeds, right? And they recognized that at the Special Operations Division, they needed a section where we had the interagency to coordinate crime and terror cases. Bob Mueller was responsible for helping to set that group up. Well, here's the irony, Sean. When the Russians provided the FBI information on Camelin, the Boston bomber, the FBI compartmentalized that in their JTTF. They didn't share it with their interagency partners. The police chief, Ed Davis, was testifying all over Congress about his department didn't even know. But here's what the public doesn't know, Sean. So after the bomb, of course, everybody's trying to figure out what went wrong and who these people are. The Special Operations Division had information about drug-related activities on Camelin's family. We had a cellular phone that we identified that could have been investigated early in 2011. Now, here's the other piece. In the Boston Homeland Security Office with DEA, they had a major marijuana case that we call an OSIDEF case, which Bruce Orr later was the OSIDEF director. Well, they had a major marijuana organization. One of the kids that was mutilated in the apartment on the 10-year anniversary of 9/11 was a target of that marijuana case. Camelin's best buddy from the gym was laying in the pile of blood in the apartment, and no one could figure it out because no one had the pieces of the puzzle. Now, Sean, what's really disturbing is we have 9/11 commissions, we have Inspector General reports, and year after year we talk about information sharing. When is somebody going to be held accountable? And then Bob Mueller went on TV in front of Congress, and I have the video, in 2013 and told the American public that the FBI did a thorough investigation reading, from the information about Camelin. How do you say you did a thorough investigation when you didn't even coordinate with your interagency partners and you didn't share it with the Attorney General's information sharing program in D.C., which was my center? So we missed the golden opportunity, and poor Martin Richard, 8 years old, is mutilated in front of his mother and father on the streets of Boston because of the incompetence and the lack of information sharing. And I'm waiting to see somebody be held accountable for that, Sean, because we can't continue to have all these, well, we're sorry, we forgot, we didn't check with this agency. We have automation now. We have technology that makes it very simple. One last thing about that whole Boston bombing, which is relevant. Then Congress holds a hearing to compare Boston and Austin 5 years after the Boston bombing. It was so misleading because in the Austin case, the bombs went off. Of course, law enforcement's going to work together to find the killer. But in the Boston case, they had 2 years before the bomb, and nobody was involved in the investigation except a compartmentalized group in the FBI. When is this madness going to stop, Sean? Let me
bring Greg in. There's a really good point that I think he's making here, and that is when you think of all the time, effort, attention that we are now discovering that people are devoting at the highest levels of these agencies to sabotaging a political process. Yeah, I don't think they have much time for what their real jobs are, Greg.
Well, that's true. And look, some of the people we've been talking about here the last several minutes, Bob Mueller in particular, but James Comey as well. The truth about these two men completely belies and undermines their carefully crafted image as Boy Scouts. They are not. They're unprincipled, they're unscrupulous, they're overly ambitious, they have abused their positions of power.
I'm going to have to leave it there, but I will say this. Congrats again, number one 2 weeks in a row. Greg Jarrett, Sarah Carter, this is huge news you're breaking on the program today. Well, full coverage tonight. Derek, thank you for joining us and really sounding the alarm about how we're literally... the amount of attention that's being spent on politics, we're missing opportunities to protect the American people, which is the job that most people sign up for. 800-941-SEAN is a toll-free telephone number. We'll have a lot more on this. Brennan losing his security clearance and much more tonight at 9 on Hannity. Hey, you ready for a new